I still am healing from the many procedures that I had last week. So I will be wearing my mask today. If you have any questions or you can't really understand me, feel free to unmute yourself or enter a question in the chat. Also, we are going to be in Top Hat today. So I have entered the attendance code in the chat today, which is 1185. And once I go over some logistical details, actually, we're going to pick up with a follow up with a discussion that we had um, before we had one of the tenure track finalists, right, come in and do anyway, before last week when we didn't hold class. So the first thing I want to do is I actually would like to do a little follow up in terms of the message that President Johnson sent out to the entire Stand State community this past Saturday. I don't know how many of you were able to attend the third annual Black Power Matters event on Friday. There was an attempted hijacking, right, attack of some white supremacist trolls that was very obscene, that was very disturbing. And so I actually spent, and we got them out, right? We addressed it. I addressed it directly uh, in a really unfiltered way. And then we kept on and had an absolutely really amazing, beautiful event. And actually, and fun. Like we had fun. So I do want to let you know that there is a full blown investigation happening. One of the really most disturbing things about what I still think is this really emboldening of white supremacist hatred and terrorism is that there just have not been that many consequences, right, on any level. If you look at the attempted insurrection of the US Capitol on January 6th, there's some follow up. I know there's investigations happening, for example, of several of the Capitol Police who are assigned specifically to the US Capitol. There's so many police, there's so much law enforcement in Washington, D.C., so much. Like I was there, it's my second home. I was born there. I went to undergrad there. I taught there. It's no way that that wasn't an inside job. And there's just not that many consequences. The Article 25 of the Constitution, I think at this point is pretty much useless because Donald Trump didn't make any secret about being on social media, about inciting this insurrection, this attempted hijacking of a democratically elected president. Because remember, they were hijacking it on the insurrection happened, attempted insurrection happened on January 6th because they wanted to stop the count of the votes, right? The electoral college votes. And nothing, no impeachment, nothing. And what that means is that US taxpayers, right? Government money is taxpayers' money. That's our money, right? So we're going to break some of this down a little bit later when we talk about neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a mouthful for greed, for the hijacking, the large scale, theft and corruption of our money, of taxpayers' money. Think about who's even paying taxes, because it's not the folks who are getting the lion's share of the money that we pay into the system. So that is money for the collective because it's from the collective. So taxpayer dollars are going to be paying for Donald Trump's pension for the rest of his life, right? Secret Service security for the rest of his life. That's why it was important. Very few consequences, and this is what I understand. When there are few consequences, the violence continues and it escalates. And this is what I will say in relationship to the white supremacist trolls from Friday. There is a full-blown investigation happening. I believe there need to be additional changes. For example, the cultural taxation and lack of safety and security that I feel as a Black woman living in Turlock, like that's a huge strain, right? That other people don't have to deal with, quite frankly. Other faculty members don't, unless they look like me. Other staff don't, administration don't. I do have a military background. I know I see for a Navy. So I saw in the slideshow, I see that think it's Sylvia is going to be training to be a nurse and go into the Navy. And so I'm going to come out of my own pocket to start going to a gun range in the summer. I've been considering it for over a year now. I'm keeping it totally real. I have training, but it's in the smallest gun that I have training in is a freaking M16. I learned how to shoot big guns, right, off of a off of a destroyer, a battleship. Like I didn't play with handguns. I will be going to a gun range this summer so that I know how to, and so that I can try to figure out. I don't know. Hopefully, I can try out different guns. I don't want to buy one. I've never owned a gun myself, even though I've come from, Arkansas. It's very similar to the Central Valley, which is a gun owning culture there. And I'm looking for some really simple, basic self defense classes. I don't want to do full blown martial arts. I don't have time to do that. Don't want to do that. I just want to go where I can like consistently learn some just basic maneuvers. So in addition to my height and my size, I am the height and the size of the average American man, right? I'm about 6 feet. And so it would really help me to learn some basic maneuvers in self-defense. So if anyone knows of any has any suggestions, I looked into this more than a year ago. I actually went into a jiu-jitsu studio in Modesto. That's how serious I was. And I still am. Like this is additional expense. This is additional time that other people don't have to deal with. Right? I'm a target now. And I get that. I'm okay with that. And I'm going to take measures to defend myself. And that leads me into, so in the message that President John sent out, there is a full investigation happening. It is very serious. I was on the phone this past now. It's a whole other conversation. It's complex when it comes to, we're going to talk about what abolitionism looks like in the 21st century. And in the meantime, um, I do appreciate that this is being taken seriously, because if it doesn't, nothing may come out of it. There's already been enough investigation technologically to know that this was pre-planned, it was coordinated, it was, my student assistants also believed that we were actually hacked because we were using the Zoom security devices. We were ejecting the intruders and they were still coming back in. And they shouldn't have been able to do that. When you eject someone and you put someone in the waiting room in Zoom, like they should not be able to come back in. So that speaks more to a hacking than simply, right, because I did post this event all over social media. There wasn't a password. This is a form that President John did share. If anyone knows anything or think you might know something, then you can go directly to this form and you can enter the information anonymously. That's an option. You don't have to do that. Just to report anything you may know or think you know about the Zoom. I'm going to call it what it was: white supremacist attack on Black Power Matters. So you can always go there. I plan to access it myself once I get time. And in terms of the police, that they are really looking that this could possibly escalate to the level of the FBI, because some of the VPNs, the pathways, right? Were traced back to I don't know the exact language, but to other overseas. So people like were masking, right? They're camouflaging their actual email addresses because it actually it gets rerouted or routed to an overseas server. So I did want to let you know that. I also want to let you know that, as I shared at the beginning of the semester, I had initially had set up one Zoom link that we're going to use for this class every week. And just to ensure to be proactive with security, I'm now going to be creating a different Zoom link each week, every time we meet on Tuesday. If there's Zoom bombing, because I mean, Zoom bombing, right, happens. And it has happened to other colleagues of mine. This was my first time experiencing it after a year of being on Zoom. And so I would consider myself to be very fortunate. If we get Zoom bombed, even with the individual links every week, I will start adding a password, right? I will start adding different degrees of security. So I'm going to go into Top Hat now to show you, to actually show you, as you can see, I am taking attendance, the attendance code, as you can see through the share screen, 1185. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize and keep that open. And when you go into, so I'm going to go over here for now to show you, when you go into our course platform on Top Hat, there's no more folder with the class Zoom link because I'm going to generate a different one every week. So I've already deleted that. And I also, you can disregard the, the Zoom link that's on the top of the syllabus because we won't be using that anymore moving forward. Does anyone have any questions before we continue? And you can unmute yourself or you can enter a question in the chat if you have any questions. Okay.
I do have a question, Professor.
Yes, let me make sure.
Areli.
Areli, yes, please, go ahead.
For the Zoom link, will you be emailing it a few hours before class or right at the start of class? Sorry, my daughter's right next to me. Okay. Or how would that work?
I will do both. So like I did today, like I emailed it to y'all yesterday once I had created it. And I will also email it a few hours before class. Oh yeah, no problems. And
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And also when I email it to you, I'm actually sending it directly, and I've reposted the attendance code on the chat, which is 1185. When I email it to you, I'm emailing it to you from our announcements page on our Blackboard course shell, so that if for some reason, because I know emails are it's like an avalanche of emails every day. So if you haven't seen it, it's like, oh my gosh, or you're running a little bit, it's like, oh, I've got 5 minutes. Know that the Zoom link, you will also be able to find the Zoom link every week on the announcement section of our course shell. This is a very important question, especially now that I'm gonna change it every week. So I will show you what that looks like. So I'll show you exactly where I emailed it from. So here's the announcements page for our class. I'm going to go into the student preview. And then go here, which I love because on that main page, you can see, right, the titles of each announcement. So I have the assignment for this week. And also what I did was I sent this out a couple of times. And the last time I sent it out was today, a couple of hours, about 3 hours before our class, because I have a class at 11. So what I tend to do is I end up sending, the Zoom link to you all, and I email it out from the announcements page of our course shell so that you can see, you can actually go right there. If you're like, I don't see the email, it could have gotten already, buried because of so many emails getting sent. You always know, go to the announcement section of our course shell and it's going to be posted there as well. It's a very important question. So I'm going to go to Top Hat. Because I was not here last week, what I decided to do was to go ahead and reopen all of the participation assignments from Unit 1 and from Unit 2, so that you have until today to complete the participation assignments. And here, as you can see, the reading multiple choice questions from Units 1 and 2 today. You have until 11:59 p.m. today. I've already entered the Unit 3, which again, these are short, like these are not super condensed. because I really want this content to be very digestible, right? And more so bite-sized chunks. And as we get more and more into it, it'll get a little bit more extensive. We'll have more time in class to really dive into the content. So this is available for you, Unit 3, which campus is about campus racism, that has been going on ever since universities and colleges, which were segregated by race, up until the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court ruling that not only desegregated K through 12 schools, but also universities and colleges. So ever since universities and colleges have been desegregated, there's been racism. It's very important, and it continues right to this day. So we're going to take a look at, again, in the early 90s and 80s, we're going to look at what student activism looks like on campus, and look at an example of campus racism that is by no means an isolated incident. It was not an isolated incident at this time either. It was part of a pattern, right? A larger pattern that was happening nationally across college campuses. So I think I'm actually going to start out with the academic borderlands, because we all, like pretty much everyone here, we are what the author describes as borderland students and faculty members, because we were never intended, right? We were never intended to be border students and border faculty, border scholars. We were never intended to be in the academy. We were never intended to be in the universities. I was never intended to be a scholar, right? That was not right. So we're going to get into that. But I do want to point out to you that you have until 11:59 p.m. to finish the first two. Again, whatever you haven't done, and then Unit 3 is now available. 5 multiple choice reading questions that come directly, and I see that I'm going to go to the chat in a minute. So I want to show you where the reading is. So what I suggest is that you go to part A. It's called Campus Racism, Tip of an Iceberg. Access this reading, open it before you start on the Unit 3 reading multiple choice questions. You have 2 options. You can open it as a PDF, which it is cleaner, it's clearer. The formatting was a little bit funky on this one when I converted it from PDF to Word. But you do have the 2 options. But your reading for Unit 3, the Unit 3 is based on the Campus Racism Tip of an Iceberg reading, and it does have the same title. So I suggest that you open the PDF or the Word document before you start answering the multiple choice reading questions. And again, Unit 3 is due by next Tuesday, end of day. So I'm going to go to the chat now. Yes, I do have time to stay on. I have not created that is my project. By next week, I am going to create our class Facebook group. And I will send out an announcement, right? I will post an announcement on our Blackboard course shell and send it out as an individual email once I've created our Facebook class, our private Facebook class group. And I will include the link that will take you directly to the Facebook group. But yeah, I haven't created it yet. So I will be creating that by next week. And I will send that out to everyone as an individual email with a link where you can join the group, and also you'll all be able to access it directly on the announcement section of our course shell. Yes, Julissa.
I have a question. So on the Unit 2, it says something about commenting. For one of the assignments, we have to I think it's said to put it on the Facebook page. That's why, or where do we put it?
Let me see. Because I know I believe I had something that So reflection,
I think it is.
is that, so what you're going to do is, let me see, let me deselect these and then go. So let's go to unit 2. Because actually, yeah, let's go to unit 2. I don't think it's this because the discussion is right, it's right in the body of the PowerPoint. There was one slide that I had and I deleted it because I'm like, oh, this is not correct. Like I did delete it. So there shouldn't be anything that is not correct. If there's something calling for you, let me see, I apologize for the lawn mowing. Um Yeah, if there's anything calling for you to go to Facebook, that is not correct. And I know that I deleted one of the slides because I think I did see that, so I did delete that. And I don't know if it's in unit 1. Now there's some that in class, right, that is for us actually to cover. I want to cover these in class. So there's no, and again, I haven't gotten to it yet. There's no questions for you to complete in Top Hat because I want to facilitate a discussion about what does neoliberalism look like? What does it actually mean? Right? What does it actually mean? And what does it look like? Now, I do believe that I have deleted that slide that call it was, I think I know what you're talking about. And the ones that are in class, we kind of, it's right in, we're going to do this in class. There's no assignments for you outside of class around these slides. I think it's important to see them, but I do want to do a deeper dive into them in class together. So let me see. I think I deleted that slide. I saw a slide that was, I said, oh no, that's not correct. And I deleted it because the questions all need to be either in class with no questions connected or like as far as for credit, or it needs to be part of the homework, right? Where you're earning participation points and or correct points for correctness or accuracy. So I think I did delete that one. Let me see. Okay, let me see. So I'll stop. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before I go into neoliberalism and we start our first conversation? Um, so before we do this, because I know we've got thrown off somewhat because we didn't have class last week. I really, really, really appreciated the discussion from our first session when we met this semester, or the second session. And when you all were sharing about experiences, stories, and topics that you specifically want to cover in this class. And so, what I'm going to do actually, and I'm actually going to add, because I know that there were some suggestions that I wrote down. So, I'm actually going to be just jumping into the document itself as well. And I'm going to be entering my own input as well, or the input of the students who shared when we had, this was back on January 28th. So, what I want you to take some time to do now, and you can do this. I'm going to share the link. I'm going to give 5 to 10 minutes, depending on what kind of progress you're making. I want to make sure that you can edit, and I'm going to copy the link. And I'm also going to be entering, right, what the students shared back on January 28th. So I'm going to actually assign you to breakout rooms because I want you to have time to discuss and think about. Again, think about what we cover in class as well as what kind of postings, experiences and stories and topics would you also like to see included in our postings, right, around critical social media literacy. So in the Facebook class group, once I get that set up, because this is going to be really, really good timing. I'm going to go to this document, and you can be specific and but it's and you can kind of put SB in the parentheses if you want to include the experience, the topic, and or the stories, and see postings on that on our Facebook class group. So what I'm going to do right now before I have you go into breakout groups, and again, there's no slides. This is not a Google Doc slide. Table. So you can start entering. Please go ahead and access the link to the table. So in your small breakout groups, you can just kind of start jumping around where no one's right in that particular space entering the information. And I'm going to start out really fast because I already have input from January 28th from students that I'm going to add. So does anyone have any questions before we go into the breakout rooms? It is now 12:56. I'm going to be in the document too. So I'm like about 110. 110 will reconvene and look over it. So I'm going to go ahead and get those breakout rooms set up so that you can discuss it in small groups, and definitely have, maybe assign one person to kind of enter, right? So that it's kind of like not a whole, like everybody trying to be in the document at the same time. That's a suggestion, but definitely you can go ahead and jump in if you would like to have more than one person in your group. And because there's no group slides designated by breakout group number, you don't need to worry about, knowing what your breakout group number is. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create the rooms, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, we're waiting for everyone to come back. Okay, I think everyone's, yeah, there we go. Welcome back, everyone. I am really excited by these topics. And I know, for example, that several, like I know that the Facebook posts definitely cover, and I will make sure that they continue covering the topics that you all about shared. Oh, this is awesome. Yes. So, um, and yes, sharing the links, like you all will definitely be able to contribute to the postings on Facebook as well. So I want to give an example, for example, about indigenous cultures and where they are now, and ways that are in ways they are still being affected and not talked about, as well as Native American suffering in the 21st century, and actually speak to how the unit on campus racism actually addresses this directly. You will see this in the reading, and the university, even though it's in a currently a state that's the vast majority of the population is white, it is on unceded Abenaki lands. Like this, the article, the reading goes into all of this, and it's going to be very important to see the coalition that was formed on this particular campus in order to combat white supremacy, where there actually were and continue to be a significant proportion of the student population that is Native American. So it's really exciting because you're going to get a chance to immediately start looking into um, the ways that in the 21st century, the suffering, the issues, like, for example, the fact that all students of color, all scholars are of color, we are all border scholars and students, according to the neoliberalism in the academy, right? That unit 1 reading. So I'm going to go to that right now because that very specifically addresses this, which is really, I mean, it's mind bending when you think about the people that are the actual stewards of this land, right? Turtle Island, and that they are also considered border students, because even though they have been here for tens of thousands of years, right? White supremacy mandates that the system was not created for them, including Native Americans. And I want to say also that when we shift to looking at again, we're right now we're looking at the in part A, we're looking at the larger economic and social and political context and movements, right, and laws, especially around what's the last 40 to 50 years in the US is absolutely economically has been devastating for the vast majority of people in the US because of neoliberalism. It's all about greed. It's all about redirecting the money that we all contribute. Not, well, actually, right, not even, I'm not going to say that, because people at the top echelons economically have all types of ways of getting out of, for example, paying taxes. And like the collective taxpayer monies are being redirected, right, through privatization, through deregulation. All that means is we're going to take the public schools, we're going to take the public lands that taxpayers have been sustaining for generations that are not, right, that are unceded in indigenous lands. We're going to take the Social Security, all these programs. Privatizing means we want to take all of everything that's been built by the collective's money that we've been forced to pay for generations, and we're going to give it away. We're going to give all these sweetheart contracts, these backdoor to private corporations. That's what neoliberalism is. We're going to create more and more positions in universities and colleges for administrators. Part of that is because of changing guidelines, changing policies like Title IX anti-discriminatory, right, policies. They have to have a coordinator. A lot of it is it's the top-heavy greed model where you see, if you saw Wolf of Wall Street, right, all this celebration of Wall Street culture, it means creating these positions and then administrators paying themselves six figures while faculty members, let's not even talk about not lecturers who are not tenure track, make a fraction of that, and where a lot of the increase in tuition and in fees that students and families increasingly have to pay has to do with neoliberalism in two ways. It has to do with the federal government and states and cutting funding, defunding education. Let's talk about defunding education at the K through 12 level and at the university levels as well. And also, and part of the money has actually been redirected into prison construction, right? Private prison contracting. You got a chance to look at why that is. It's about the money. It's about profit over people. It is that simple. That is what neoliberalism is. It is unchecked greed, and it's all of the laws and it's all of the policies that goes into that, that supports that. Now, that's what it is. Like we can have whatever opinions about what that is. That's what it is. And it's bipartisan. Big money and corruption and US government and politics on every level has been in place for centuries. Tammany Hall in Chicago, 19th century, is nothing new. And so that's why politicians, elected officials, especially at the federal level, how do they become millionaires? We pay, right? I mean, as far as their base salary of US senators, of US representatives, that's 100% paid by us. Government money is our money. It's taxpayers' money. How many of you on social media or wherever heard about what is going to become more and more and more common? Extreme weather events because of climate catastrophe. That it's science, bipartisan, but not but like everything gets so politicized, right? We're talking about decades of world scientific reports. So the deep freeze in Texas. If you heard about the storm, this has just been barely a week and a half ago, type yes in the chat. If you did not hear anything about what was happening in Texas, type no in the chat. Okay. I see some yeses. For me, when I learned, this was below zero in Texas, extreme weather, right? Extreme weather events. I was done when I learned that an 11-year-old boy froze to death in his bed. He froze to death. Basic infrastructure. People want to talk about government. You don't like gut. That's what our taxpayers' money is supposed to. Basic infrastructure, right? Electricity, so the power stays on. Access to water. Emergency services. Intervention when the storm hits. That's what, because that's collective taxpayer monies. That's what it's supposed to be used for. That's why elected officials, their base salaries are paid 100% by taxpayers. Best medical insurance, that's paid by us 100%. They're getting kickbacks, lobbyists, that's how they become millionaires, right? Big money. on both sides of the aisle. Big money on both sides. So, how many of you heard about what the U.S. Senator to Texas, Ted Cruz? What did Ted Cruz do? His own state, people are freezing to death. They don't have access to clean water. You know that we will die of dehydration. 3 days max. You'll die from not having water way faster than you'll starve to death. If you know what the Texas senator did when the storm came, enter yes in the chat. If you don't know, enter no in the chat. This is neoliberalism. This is what it looks like. This is the impact that it has. Okay. Most people have entered no. A few people have entered yes. If you would like to unmute yourself or enter in the chat, what did Ted Cruz do? He was elected to serve this state. Texas is the state that he represents in the U.S. Senate. 100% of his base salary, all the money that it costs to have, that U.S. elected officials have the best benefits of anybody in the country. That's paid for 100% by taxpayers. He left with, yes. Thank you, Natalie. He went to Mexico. Thank you, Albert. He took a trip to Cancun. He got out of Dodge intentionally. He knew. Hugo, he abandoned his people. That's his job. That's his job. He's a U.S. Senator to Texas. It is his job to represent and to serve the entire state of Texas. That's his job. Yes, Caitlin, he left with his daughter to go to, yes, he did. His wife planned the trip, and he also invited a best friend from college. Julissa, yes, he took his daughters to Cancun. And then the next day, he came back to do damage control and posted Texas Strong and took pictures. Oh, Julissa, see, I didn't even know the follow-up. I knew he was trying to do damage control. Because U.S. senators, their terms are for 6 years. He doesn't run for re-election until 2024. And by this time, and here's the thing, it's going to be hard for anyone to defeat him in the election. And then how can it be hard to defeat someone who does this? But what you may have not have known yet, he actually, okay, so let me pull up something else, because we're gonna focus on neoliberalism for a minute, because I really want you to get what it is. It's a mouthful of a word. So I'm gonna go to YouTube. And this, he spoke, and he made a joke. So I want to get the part, I don't want the full speech. So this was the joke. This was after the storm. I mean, this was like in the last week. He went to it's called the Conservative PAC, right? Public Action Committee in Orlando. He jokes, Orlando is not as nice as Cancun. So Julissa, after he cut the trip to Cancun short, paid for by taxpayers' money, People say government money, that's our money. There were mayors in Texas saying, you don't have water, you don't have electricity, you're on your own. You're not getting a handout. How is it a handout when that's our money? That's their money. That's taxpayer money. How is that a handout? The brainwashing, I don't get how people are, I mean, I do, but you know, I care about my money. I'm just, and my resources and equitable, right? This is our money. It's not handouts. So after he came back and he cut the trip short, and he's doing these photo ops, he's like, uh-oh, I went too far. People died, freezing to death, including an 11-year-old child went to bed in the midst of this extreme climate event with the coats on under the covers. The next morning, his parents go to wake him up and he is deceased. And Ted Cruz comes back and after doing minimal damage control, makes a joke. Makes a joke. I just want to show you that. I'm not going to play it, but it's not as nice as Cancun. That's neoliberalism. It's what it is. So we're going to go to, I'm going to be skipping around here a little bit. So before I go, and this applies to everything, right? This applies to every, not just universities, to every institution, from Native Americans, people whose ancestors have been on this land of thousands of years, right, on the margins, and including those classified as white, who are not wealthy, who are not middle class or upper middle class. Intersectional socioeconomic status. So let's go to modern day colonialism. Let me get out of this. So here we go. So I want to be clear. I added these terms. These terms are not in the readings because I want you to really understand. When I was a doctoral student completing my doctorate at Temple in Philadelphia, is when neoliberalism was first really gaining traction. And it's about greed. Privatization is about part of the reason why electricity, why water, why emergency services were not available in a very wealthy state, right? Texas is the oil state. These services that were public before, right? Collective, taxpayer money. So we need the infrastructure. We need the, right? They've been outsourced to private companies that charge 2 or 3 times as much and that don't maintain the services, don't maintain the infrastructure. Privatization, outsourcing of these core, this is the electricity, water, transportation system. These are the basic necessities of a modern day society. This isn't socialism. This isn't communism, but the greed has gotten so out of hand. That's all private. People, privatization, it's right. They're selling off these certain things need to be kept in the public sector. That's why we have government. That's why we pay their salaries, right? Corporate welfare. Have you ever heard of corporate welfare? Put yes in the chat. If you haven't heard of, if you've never heard of, put no. I doubt if you have. Taxpayers on a regular basis. We've been doing this since the 80s. billions of dollars in taxpayers' subsidies, bailouts, not paying taxes. Billions of dollars of taxpayers' money goes to corporate welfare every year. Let's talk about COVID-19. Let's talk about the U.S. Congress's first relief package before that little $1,200. That's our money. All of it is our money. It's taxpayer dollars. And this is when we need it. In the midst of a global pandemic, that's our money. We need it now, right? Collectively. That's why we pay taxes. What was the first relief package that Congress passed? And I think it went under the radar for a lot of people. $2 trillion went to multinational corporations, went to bail out the cruise industry, went to bail out and shore up the airline industry. These are multinational, multi-billion-dollar industries that have a lot of options, right? They have a lot of different options, at least some options, to figure out how to sustain themselves in a way that the millions and millions of Americans who are going to food lines, right? They got to choose between electricity and buying food for their families, who are being kicked out of their apartments and their homes. We don't have the options, right? So this was like, in addition to regular corporate welfare, we really saw it. Corporate welfare meets COVID-19. Corporate welfare meets COVID-19. That very first stimulus was a $2 trillion. None of that. It wasn't until the second one they started talking about moratoriums, which they started talking about paid sick leave. That ain't, deregulation. Deregulation again is all about. Can you imagine if the glossaries are provided, free market? This term is called an oxymoron. It's when you put two things that are opposite of each other in the same expression. The stock market is not free. We pay for it. We prop it up. We consistently, our money's trillions and trillions of dollars are used to bail them out. Trillions of dollars of taxpayer money. That's not their money. That's our money. You got to change the rhetoric around this. It's neoliberalism. So that's why it's so here's a graph. Based on this graph, which is old, it's not, so April 2020, not super old. I want you to enter in the chat. Which country spends the largest percentage of its gross domestic product, right? GDP. So this is not even in real dollars and cents. Which country spends the most in the world as of April 2020? Yep. The United States. Which country? So I want to ask you all, in reference to the increase in anti-Asian racist xenophobia attacks, hate crimes in the US, and Islamophobia, which is very, very intense in the US ever since 9/11, especially 2001. So let's look at the countries. So I want you to look at China, and then I want us to look at Saudi Arabia. And even so, which country spends the second largest amount of its gross domestic product on their military? Is it China? Is it Saudi Arabia? It's kind of combined with the rest of the world. So when we look at Saudi Arabia, which is the part of the kind of pie, it's the infographic, is in yellow. I mean, Saudi Arabia only spends 3.2%. That's of its, right? of its gross domestic product. So this is one way of looking at what happens when neoliberalism or greed is the overriding priority. Is it's not enough to just hoard the resources that are acquired from the people in the country and our tax dollars, then, which has been happening, right? This is like the US was initially a British colony, and it's currently an empire in decline, quite frankly. And part of it is we're going to need to make sure that we're still extracting resources, still establishing economic hegemony in these other parts of the world, instead of trying to back away, right, from neoliberalism. So we're going to really invest a lot of money into the military. Increasingly, again, defunding healthcare, defunding basic services and infrastructures, defunding education, defunding behavioral health, defunding creating new jobs that would be very lucrative and that would also address climate catastrophe and that would also reinvest and rebuild the infrastructures and update them and modernize them. Instead, no, we're just going to focus on profit, 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 profit. That's neoliberalism. So what I want to go to now before I have you, because I want you all, this is another way. Now, this is older because this one is in dollars and cents, real dollars. Apologize for the landscaping. So so I want you to think about, this was in 2014, more than a half of $1 trillion. I mean, more than half because 581 billion, half of $1 trillion would be $500 billion. So we're talking about more than a $500 million in 1 year. In 1 year. Imagine what a fraction of that money can go to. And where is that $500 billion coming from? From my pocket, from your pocket. Anyone who's paying taxes. Everyone's not paying taxes. Everyone's not paying close to the proportion, right, of their income that's taxpayers' money. That's what government money is. It's taxpayer money. That's where that comes from. That's neoliberalism. So this is a definition. You got a chance to see, you know what, I'm going to put in, T's being really loud right now. I apologize, y'all. I'm going to put my earbuds in. Hopefully that will help. Okay. Can everyone still hear me? Please do a thumbs up if you can hear me, still hear me. Okay, perfect. So this is a definition, again, that I integrated into the unit. It's not in our reading. So what I want to shift to is, again, so this is an updated statistic from 2012, a 2012 Cato study. So when you see the government, when you see government program, when you see government money, that's taxpayer money. That's what it is. It's not a handout. But in this case, is it? So every year, $100 billion every year. People talk about welfare, right? People talk about wanting to cut and cut and cut nutritional, for example, supplemental nutritional assistance program, SNAP. And as taxpayers, we spend about $100 billion every year on corporations to prop them up. That's neoliberalism. That's not a free market. We're paying for this market. It's not free. It's not free. So now, it's 2015, and looking at, there's still, I mean, when you look at the dollar amounts, I think it's really important to see the statistics and the data. We look at the total federal spending from 2015, which was $3.8 trillion. And so now we can see why there's been this concerted effort for many, I would say for decades, at least for like 30 years. This is why some politicians want to privatize Social Security. Regardless of where you fall in terms of, this is why. It's about the money. And what they mean by privatize it is, what do you mean by privatize it? It's going to go off into corporate hands, in addition to the $100 billion that taxpayers already have redirected and allocated, right? And so it's about the money. The same ways that where there's always this push, this threat to privatize Medicare, right? So that can go into corporate hands. That's privatization. That's deregulation. That's why corporations hire lobbyists. You want to make a lot of money, you could become a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., because they want to get access to this. This is taxpayer money. That's right. This is taxpayer money. Corporations want to get access to it. And again, the problem with deregulation is, and as soon as it goes into corporate hands, out of governmental hands, even though it's still taxpayer money, we no longer have any say. We no longer have any oversight, right? There's no transparency. We no longer get any voice in how our tax monies are used at that point. When it goes from the public sector to the private sector, it's about the money. There's a lot of money in it. So these are all examples of neoliberalism. So I'm going to go to the chat. Yes, thank you, Julissa. Yeah, people get really, they kind of freak out when you talk about defunding the police. But defunding is actually nothing radical. Like Julissa says, the USA has no issue defunding education and health. But when it comes to their cops, right, they want to get hurt. And I want to, reading what Julissa, yeah, I mean, like, so defunding is not radical. It's not even new. We've been defunding everything. More and more money is going to the military, and for city budgets, like the US across the board spends billions of dollars on law enforcement. Even more of it, like on teachers, more on firefighters, right? Those are all public servants. And the reason why the phrase is protect and serve, again, who pays 100% of law enforcement, firefighter, and teacher salaries? The taxpayers. The taxpayers. For all these different court cases, right? We're taking the different police who have been charged with murdering unarmed Black men, women, and children. All of their legal costs, the taxpayers pay for that, right? The taxpayers, we pay for that. So defunding is not radical. We've been doing it. We've been doing it. This country has been doing it. So, oh my God. So I really wanted to get to, and I know it's time for us to go. So we're going to start next week with going through this. And we're going to take a hard, cold look. The top 15 states that spend more on prisons than education. Which state is number one? Which state spends more, the number one state, for spending more on prisons than education? Yes, I was surprised when I saw this. This is why I love data. So we're going to get into this next week. We're going to unpack this next week because we need to understand what is happening at the state level with neoliberalism and funding in order to stand that California is both the state that created ethnic studies and also the main state that has tried to dismantle it. So we're going to get into that next week. Yes, I will. And so I am going to allow you all to log off at this point. I will be staying, and I will be staying for a few more minutes, but it is 1:46. So you are free to go. And if you have any questions at any point about the assignments or anything else, please send me an email. So I'll see you next Tuesday without the mask, unless something doesn't go right. So hopefully that will happen. And I think, Jessica, I don't know if you, let me just, I want to make sure I reassign. Let me see. Okay, not this. I need to, okay. I'll reassign it in a minute. Okay, does everyone have any questions? I'm staying on because I know that, Jessica, you have a question.
Oh, yeah, I just had a question because I haven't been able to access Top Hat just because um, I've been emailing back and forth with financial aid, so I still haven't
Okay.
had time to buy
Okay.
it, but I'm gonna buy it today, but I was wondering if you could still extend the date a little
Yes.
more, just so I can go back and do
Yes.
those assignments, just because I haven't been able to at all.
Absolutely. I will extend it. I will extend it all through next week. And then if that's not enough time, we'll circle back around.
Okay, for sure. I just wanted to like talk to you really quick to like let you know, like,
Yeah.
please, like, I hope it doesn't close tonight
Yes.
because I don't have time today to do it because I have all my classes
Right.
back to back.
Right.
But thank you so much. If you can extend it, that would be great.
I will definitely do that. That's perfect because I actually need to reassign the unit I was in. So I'll extend the units 1 and 2.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Reddy and Nialani, do you have questions? Okay, I don't think they have questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and log off, and I'm gonna extend everything in Top Hat for you right now, Jessica.